What's going on, all you gamers? Today we're back with some more Outriders Worldslayer. Today they've updated Worldslayer. The patch is massive, to say the very least. There's a lot of adjustments. If you want to know what they've buffed, nerfed, and just darn right changed that right, then stay tuned. That's coming up next. Welcome back everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at Outriders, what they've changed for the Worldslayer, and this patch is absolutely massive. I would love to say this isn't going to take very long, but it's quite extensive, so strap yourself in for a bit of a bumpy ride. I will be looking at this with you, as I've not really kind of looked it over yet. I've glanced at it, but ultimately we'll all be looking at this together. As always, if this helps you out, a like would be super appreciated, and if you'd like to subscribe to the channel or follow me over on Twitter, then hit up those following links. But for now, we're going to be jumping into the adjustments and looking at just what they've done. So, the preamble: all changes made in today's patch have been carefully considered, and many of them are in the results of direct feedback and discussion with and within the community. For additional context around what we chose to address, a few weeks after Worldslayer had launched and we had been able to gather enough data, we drew up a full view of which PAX nodes were being used by what percentage of the player population. This task highlighted that a small number of nodes were seeing usage of 40 to 60% or more. On the other hand, some other nodes were seeing a 1% or similar usage. The reasons for this are twofold. Many of the highly used nodes were in a state where to not use them would be to deny oneself a lot of damage output. They were must-haves in the eyes of players, and these are the kind of nodes that allowed players to kill bosses within seconds, or to even entirely ignore cooldown mechanisms. And in a few cases, these unintended performances were the results of bugs within the node mechanics themselves. On the other hand, the lesser picked nodes were not considered valuable enough when compared to these others. We've seen that in quite a few of the PAX tree nodes. I thought that was kind of intended in certain regards, because the numbers just spoke for themselves. So it's a little bit strange, because you could kind of tell that players were going to lean towards a certain way most times. We primarily saw this behaviour on the Devastator, Pyromancer and Technomancer trees. The Trickster PAX trees we've seen to be very balanced overall, with most nodes seeing an average 25% pick rate, which indicates that players are much more able to play according to their style, without being forced into the must-have nodes. Which is great, except for Trickster was the one that everyone was moaning about the most, because they thought he was kind of underperforming when compared to the rest. But maybe that is because the nodes on the others were just a lot better. As has ever been our goal, we want players to have as much choice and as much viable build options as possible. When new players join Outriders, we do not want there to be a single answer to questions regarding what build should I play. This makes sense, it really does. Please don't have broken the game, we'll see in a moment. Which today's balancing contains a very large number of changes that will make many things more powerful and viable. None of those changes would matter if we left the overperformers entirely unchecked, however. Please bear in mind that even if a full handful of nodes and mods had their power curtailed, we have generally tried to compensate for the power loss in other areas of the game. We hope you enjoyed the new balance in Outriders Worldslayer, and we'll see you on Enoch. Right, so it sounds like they've done some buffs to try and compensate. I guess we'll find out. I really hope they have, because I'm worried about those PAX trees. They were the things that were making you hit like a truck. If they've nerfed the heck out of them, then we'll definitely feel it. Right, so general balance changes: Apocalypse tier leveling. Starting from Apocalypse tier 20, the requirement to level up each Apocalypse tier has been reduced by 10%. This is something that was a must-have. It was definitely needed. Honestly, that's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. 10%? No. They've not looked at that far enough. Further down the line, this will change again. It will definitely help, I'm not going to lie. But I'd say probably after around about 20%, maybe even more than that, just through how much you've got to grind in this game with the same content. Resources and Anomaly Extract. The amount of Anomaly Extract gained has generally been improved, and the amount of Anomaly Extract gained in Turrier Gratar's Troves has been increased by 500%. See, again, that's good, that's really nice, but it's saying troves. I don't want to go to the troves, so I'm hoping you get it from somewhere else as well. I'm not trying to sound negative, but I don't think the troves are really key areas to be hitting up most times, to be fair. A full run through the Tarja Gratar, including troves, net out at around double the amount of anomaly extract earned per run when compared to before this patch. Boss running the final Arbiter will net slightly more anomaly extract than before, but this will not be the most efficient route for anomaly extract farming. That to me is not a very good fix. I'm sounding so negative, I'm not usually like this, I apologise, but I don't want to be running troves, I don't want to be doing full runs. I think it's pointless. You're going to spend an hour getting to that last guy, and most of the time he's the only guy you'll be trying to get any of the actual loot off of. Again, does help a little bit, but I think that might be a little bit of an error because I can't see people doing full runs. I really can't. Crafting and upgrading, starting at item level 50, the anomaly extract costs required to upgrade gear has been reduced by 5%. Between the two above changes, increased gains and reduced costs, players should be able to support upgrading 2 full sets of gear per apocalypse tier level. This should enable a greater amount of experimentations and limit the need to hoard resources in order to be able to upgrade the currently equipped set. That's good. 5% doesn't sound like much. I'm sounding so negative with all this. Apologies. These numbers just seem very low. I guess I'll have to see when it's in game. Maybe they're just going to stack up more than I think. But at least it is an increase, and anytime it's an increase will definitely help us out, because at the moment it's just way too grindy. Apocalypse gear drop rates, starting at Apocalypse tier 11, the increased chance of Apocalypse variant gear has been increased for each Apocalypse tier. So they haven't said how much exactly, but it'll probably be incremental with each tier, so at least it'll be a bit of a buff, and getting to that 40 will make you drop an absolute abundance more by the looks of it. Expeditions rewards have been increased in order to make expeditions feel more viable alongside Tarja Gratar. The loot gain per time investment should now feel quite similar between expeditions and Tarja Gratar. That is a must. Thank goodness they've looked at that, because ultimately nobody ran expeditions. There was no point. Nah, that sounds quite tasty. I'm wondering what they've done with Eye of the Storm then, because if they've made that so that it drops apocalypse like stuff at the end, that could be something that'll be very, very farmable. I guess I'll check that out when I jump in. Players should now receive a greater amount of epic and legendary items and comparatively fewer rare items in expeditions. Anomaly extract farming should now also feel more viable to do in the expeditions. So it may well be that you're going to be trying to do your anomaly extract farms in the expeditions rather than Trials of Tarja Gratar. That could be something quite interesting, especially if the drops are increased. Right, so onto the balance changes, and now we're onto the Devastator. Earth and Shell added a 0.5 second cooldown, saying that due to a display rounding quirk to the engine, this cooldown will be displayed as being 1 second. It probably can't show it as 0.5, but it is actually 0.5. Greatly increased shield generation values. Explanation: Earth and Shell has been identified as being slightly too strong, hence why Devastators pretty much are invincible, but to be fair, if you're a tank class, you're supposed to be tanky, so it kind of made sense a little bit, I suppose. So we're applying a brief cooldown to the shield generation that was being abused through excessive animation cancelling. This will give some enemies a little more opportunities to be able to damage Devastators, who were otherwise pretty much immortal. Yep, there was a few out there that did that, but I think even with their kit how it is, they probably still will be able to make that work. Multi-strike stored damage is now capped at 700% of anomaly power. With its explanation, Multi-strike's untamed potency has been a topic of discussion since the launch of Worldslayer. In an attempt to not completely gut its numbers, we have applied a cap to add a movable through anomaly power ceiling to the node. So it's 700, that's still a very nice kind of cap, to be fair, but if you were used to it being infinite, I don't know how that's going to affect your build, as I've not actually played around with Devastator that much. I'm guessing this will actually affect quite a few of their builds, probably some of the ones with Earthquake by the sounds of it. Terms of engagement, stored number is now capped at 700, exactly the same as above, much like Multi-strike, we're finding that there was a bug and yada yada yada, so you've got your cap at 700% on that as well. Again, it looks like they're doing massive changes to Devastators because they were way overperforming by the looks of it. Finishing touch, increase the ammo to weapon damage coefficiency provided by this node. Explanation, as part of our drive to make firepower Devastators more viable because they weren't the best, we are increasing the missing ammo to weapon damage by upping the value to more than its previous 1-for-1 relation. So next up, and we've got impact point, increased damage scaling from 30% to 50% of anomaly power, so this one's a buff. This buff forms part of the overall power shift this patch in the introduction for Devastators. The overall aim is to move the Devastator meta away from its current form and instead open up multiple new viable options for play. Now, I am all for this, but at the same time, I absolutely detest it when they do this. They've done it a few times over, I see it in a lot of games now, and I think when it's this hard to grind for gear, sometimes you've got to be very careful, especially if they do, I don't know if they are, but if they're moving it away from Anomaly and back to Firepower, which it originally was in the base game, and then went on to Anomaly, especially if you spent hundreds of hours grinding for that gear, it could be an absolute nightmare for you. Obliteration, increased base anomaly power and resistance piercing from 6% to 10%. So no need to read their explanation, obviously not many people were picking that by the looks of it, or they just want to make it a little bit of an increase in order for people to go down that route and get a little bit more anomaly power and resistance piercing about himself. Upheaval, increased the percentage of stored damage from 10% to 15%. And fixed a couple of bugs that caused the Devastator's Upheaval Pax node to act in an unexpected and inconsistent way, such as acting differently when triggered by the Impale skill. As we have applied a cap to multi-strike, and a bug fix will now make Upheaval only store the activated player's own damage, which I'm guessing it didn't before then. As was always intended, we are increasing the amount of stored damage as part of the overall Devastator power shift. Elitism. Fixed a bug that prevented the Devastator's pack node Elitism from currently working on bosses. Wow, that's quite a bug. Right, so I'm guessing if you didn't know about that, now you do. Reduce the cooldown on Elitism from 5 seconds to 1 second. That's a complete change up. Okay, that's constant then almost. The bug fix supported the node's core purpose, providing power when fighting elites and boss enemies. However, during our analysis of Elitism's usage and behaviour, we identified that its previous uptime was clocked at around 50% at best. So that obviously absolutely sucked as a node before, and now they're making it probably one that you're gonna have as a must-have if you're fighting for those boss fights and such. Overwhelming Force, increasing armour to damage conversion from 40% to 60%, so another nice little increase there. Paladin and Champion, removed the protection keyword requirement and changed both nodes to activate on any skill. After a long discussion, we came to the conclusion that in order to truly unlock Devastator build variety, we had to remove the hindering factor of protection keyword on both of these multiplier nodes. This change is part of an overall power shift to make more Devastator sets and playstyles more viable. It definitely seems like they're doing a lot with Devastator. They obviously weren't happy with how it was. I know Devastator was probably the strongest previous to this patch. It hit like an absolute truck, but it looks like now they're trying to move things around so that you have more of a playstyle about yourself and probably don't go down that one meta. Mighty Tank increased the percentage cap from 40% to 50% for both anomaly power and firepower. Nice little 10% increase, that will definitely help out if you're taking that. And Despair reduced the percentage of its anomaly damage multiplier from 100% to 30%. Oh dear, right. Everyone has almost definitely just clicked off of this who's a Devastator now and uninstalled the game. That's massive. That was a must-have back in my days, and I think it definitely is now. I don't know how that's going to work. So their explanation is that pretty much everybody is using Gravity Leap, which, yeah, it's probably the Devastator's best move. It makes them get around the place like a Trickster and such. They get in, they get out. It gave them a massive buff to their anomaly damage when they were hitting things. But now it's not going to be a must-have, not at 30%, it's really not. That is a massive decrease. and may make a lot of people unhappy with that, so we'll see how they get on with later on. Bullet acceleration increases base damage from 33 to 60. From the looks of it, they're trying to add value to reflect bullet and bullet skills, so that would definitely help it because it's almost a double up. Again, like I said earlier though, I don't particularly like it when they do this. It looks like they knew the meta was pretty much Anomaly at the moment, so they're shifting it back to firepower by the looks of it, or by the very least trying to kind of put it more in line. If it is in line, that's fair enough, but if it works out that everything you've worked for is completely down the drain, I think they have a bit of an uproar on their hands. So we'll see how all these patch notes get on. The strongest first increases damage to the enemy with the highest HP from 50% to 75%. That's actually really good. That's a nice one to have on then. Primal Chain increases the damage provided by the Primal Chain mod from 10% to 15%. Again, they're not all nerfs. There's a lot of things they're playing around with, but it does definitely look like they're trying to shift people away from what they were previously using and trying to chuck them into complete different playstyles and builds. Bannerlord Legendary Set added extra functionality that provides 35% Anomaly power bonus. They needed that. I had a little go of the Bannerlord and it wasn't good. It wasn't good in the slightest. Now 35% Anomaly power bonus may well make it viable and probably contend with the Seismic Commander a bit. So Marshall's Legendary Set increased both percentages of shared physical and anomaly damage from 30% to 50%. Again, big increase. It's definitely trying to make some of the sets that aren't used have a bit of a chance against all of the other sets, and I'm guessing you're going to see a lot of different builds coming from those Devastators soon. Jumping over to the Concussioner Legendary Set, they've changed everything on Devastator. They literally have changed everything. So the primary attribute switched to bonus firepower, which always should have been, so that should make quite a big difference. Secondary attributes switch to contain close range damage and status power. They're saying the Concussioner set suffered from a severe case of identity crisis. Basically, it didn't work properly with how they intended it. They thought it was going to do something, it didn't, and the PAX nodes weren't good enough to make it work anyway by the looks of it. So now you'll have to see if it's worth doing, and hopefully a bit more firepower will definitely help that out. Statue's Leg Slot. Item now provides bonus firepower instead of max health. I didn't even know that for the leg slot. I thought the leg slot was pretty much always firepower or anomaly, so I don't know how I missed that one. But also, a side note, it says that these will not apply to the previous ones you've collected, and instead you will need to have to farm new and existing gear in order for these changes to take place. Ouch, that will be the same for everything by the looks of it, so all your old stuff is going to be as it is. Everything that's changed, you're going to need to farm for it again. So a little bit more grinding. Now you can go into those expeditions as well if you're bored of Tari Gratar by the looks of it. Right, so swiftly moving on to the Technomancer, added a 0.2 second cooldown to the node of lethal devices. 0.2 second cooldown, I can't see that making too much of a massive change, but they're saying it should control the excessive amount of damage that's being kind of kicked out by it a little bit. Twin Reaper increased echo damage from 25% to 35% and fixed a bug that prevented the Technomancer's Twin Reaper PAX node from functioning properly after loading into a level. Kinetic Converter reduced the cooldown from 5 to 1 second. Again, these numbers are so different. 5 to 1 second makes it almost up constant. And they're saying the healing path for Technomancers has long been underrepresented, so we are increasing this PAX node's frequency to ensure the benefit of overhealing occurs more often and effectively be utilised in combat more. Again, can't see anyone worrying too much. There's no real people going in healing in this game, and most times now a lot of people are playing it single player in order to just crack through the content and grab that loot a bit faster. Hastened Influence increased the cooldown reduction from 0.5 to 1 second. Burrowing Charge reduces cooldown from 5 to 3 seconds. They're saying it's performing well in terms of numbers, but they want to make it a little bit more multi-enemy encounter friendly. Blightfire fixed a bug that caused the Technomancer's Flame Leper's Blightfire set bonus to consume and trigger off of Toxic, that had been applied by other players, which in turn denied those players their application of toxic. Ouch, that's a bit mean. Fixed a bug that prevented toxic multiplier mods from correctly working when applied to the Blightfire. Explanation: it was broke, we sorted it out. Downpour, legendary set. Increased cluster scaling from 100% to 115% of anomaly power. Explanation: we are increasing the cluster scaling as compensation for still visible issues with targeting, travel time and detonation time of Scrapnel. Scrapnel still won't be viable in my books. I don't think you'll see many people running this set, even though it's quite fun. That's probably not a big enough buff to make it worthwhile, because by the time you've done all those grenades, a lot of times, especially if you're playing in a multiplayer lobby, everything's already dead before they explode. Right, so coming over to my class, fingers crossed, please be nice. Carbon footprint increases cooldown. Increase the cooldown reduction from 0.5 to 1 second. Not the worst thing in the world, that could definitely be a lot worse. Carbonization increases damage multiplier from 20 to 25%. The immobilized path in the pack skill tree, basically they're saying it's not been represented enough, so they're trying to make that one a little bit more so. This, I don't like the way that's sounding. On to convection, reduced cooldown reduction from 4 to 2 seconds. Ouch. Convection was just a must-have node. It really was. It meant that you're going to get your skills very, very often, and in those anomaly builds, that was one of the best things you could have. Arsonist reduced the cooldown from 5 to 4 seconds. They're saying that the reason for this has been overshadowed by Convection, which fulfills the former's role entirely in the short cooldown environment. 5 to 4, not bad, not going to break the game at all. That Convection one definitely is going to be a bit of a kicker though. Moving on to Solar Flare, increased critical damage per stack from 10% to 15%. That's not bad, that's going to help out with your shooty builds, so that's quite a nice one to see. Critical mass, increased duration from 2 to 5 seconds. Again, if I remember correctly, that's the one that makes all crit shots. As soon as you get one crit shot, everything else is going to be a crit shot after that. 2 seconds was very short, now it's 5, that's much better state. But again, it looks like they're going down that we want you to start shooting stuff path rather than using your powers. Master Exploder reduced the conversion rate. I don't even want to finish this sentence. Reduced it from 100% down to 50%. I don't know whether to end this video there. Right, so explanation. Anyone who's a pyro, good luck with your build, you better change your armor sets up. Master Exploder has been overperforming when combined with the amount of resistance piercing players are gathering from multiple sources. Master Exploder completely outshined Trigger Sequence and all the rest, yada yada yada. Now it's just not as good. Right, okay, that's going to be a kicker. We'll see how that works in game with other stuff they've done, but that's a massive nerf to the pyros if you're in that anomaly builds. Backdraft, increase anomaly power per stack from 30% to 25%. Another nerf to the old pyro. That's not looking great. Trigger Sequence has been overshadowed by this, so yada yada, we're kicking that down. They're just trying to make you change your builds up. They don't like you staying how you were, all powerful with that. You better put some shooty in your build, or you're going to feel it by the looks of it. So going over to Trigger Sequence, increased damage ramp per stack from 25% to 35%. As stated, Master Exploder was the be all and end all. Now we want people to be looking at Trigger Sequence because it looks like it is a more interesting node now, and we'll have a lot of people looking at it now that it has got that increase. Burnt Offerings, increased damage ramp per tick from 10% to 20%. Explanation: Burnt Offerings is ramping too slowly in the encounter pacing that emerged post launch. So we want to see how it works now with how much it is and more reliability. Burnt Offerings, I'm telling you, it actually does a lot more damage than you thought. If you can get a big bit of anomaly going and you can go the full burn way of the Pax tree, you're going to be doing some really nice actual burn dot damage. So this will be fun to see how it works out. Wildfire and Conduction fixed a bug that prevented the Wildfire and Conduction Pyromancer skill tree nodes from being effective if players were pushing the limits of their cooldown reduction. I noticed that myself. It went to 3.7 on one of my things and it never went any lower no matter what I did. So at least they found that out and they're going to make an adjustment to it, making our cooldowns better. Mark of the Anomaly increased the damage against marked enemies from 10% to 12%. Part of an overall change in which we are providing some extra power across all firepower builds in the base game's class trees. Susceptibility, reduced resistance reduction from 40% to 30%. Really? I didn't even think that was a very good mod. I must have missed that one. They're saying that they didn't actually realise, but their explanation is that in Worldslayer we reduced a systematic solution to resistance reduction mods, but it looks like susceptibility kind of evaded that a little bit. So they're going to reduce it a slight amount. Jumping over to the armour sets, and they've said the Reforged Legendary set increased thermal bomb damage from 100% to 200%. That's massive, however it's still not the be all and end all because thermal bomb's actually quite hard to make work in anything that's not that heat seeker set. Increased feed the flames damage from 100% to 200%. Right, that makes sense. The second one's good as long as they've kept it exactly the same. I'm actually working towards a build with that set, so that will be a bit more viable. Again though, it won't be the best set out there. It'll be great for ad clear, definitely great for ad clear, but I have to see what you can do with it in order to hit that boss, because I don't think 200% will be enough to make that feed the flames damage boss nuker friendly. So a lot of times I think you'll still be better off going down the route of the heat seeker set, if I'm being perfectly honest. Torturer's Legendary set increases damage shared from 30% to 50%. Basically exactly the same again, no one was using this set, they're hoping some people do now. There's a massive buff to firepower. Now when you're hitting things, everything around them is going to take 50% extra damage. That's actually quite a big incentive because it means your clear ratio is going to be much faster without you even needing to put anything in for it. So jumping over to the Trickster, Quantum Entanglement increases shared damage from 20% to 30%. That's quite nice. They've got a little buff. Trickster was, I think, a little bit lacking this time with the upgrades and stuff, so that will definitely help them out. Special Tactics increase duration from 3 to 5 seconds. We are adding a bit of breathing room for players running Special Tactics when searching for new elites on the battlefield so that they can keep stacking the ramp. Cheap Shot increased debuff duration from 5 to 10 seconds. That's actually a nice little buff. Increased the armor and resistance shred from 30 to 40%. Again, it definitely looks like they're kind of helping out the Tricksters a bit. Trickster and Technomancer have been pretty lucky so far, to be perfectly honest. I haven't got a clue about Devastator because they had so many changes we'll have to see in game. Increased on resistance shred from 30% to 40%. They're definitely helping the Trickster out. Probably needed that, so this is great to hear. Spectral Spike, cooldown reduced from 1 to 0.5 seconds. And your Temporal Blade, base cooldown reduced from 19.8 to 16.8 seconds. Quite a lot of buffs by the look of it, so that's a great start for the Trickster. And they, I think, were probably the class that needed it most. For their Wind Slash, increased base damage from 6.5 to 13, so it's doubled up the damage. I think that's good. I don't know if anyone's still going to use it, to be perfectly honest, but we'll have to see. Slow Trap, cooldown reduced from 10 seconds to 8 seconds. And Terminal Velocity Legendary set, weapon damage bonus increased from 60% to 80%. That could definitely help them out. If firepower is going to be a bigger thing now, then any increase to that, especially with the Tricksters that always used to be about firepower and now have kind of got to go the hybrid path, these could all be some really nice changes for them. So moving on to balance changes from all classes. Maxwell's Demon Legendary set fixed an issue with the set bonus only accounting for bonus firepower instead of total firepower. Okay, so it didn't kind of encompass everything. Maxwell's set was drawing from only a part of the player's firepower, which was not the intended outcome. So that should have had a big old increase now. That will hit like an absolute truck. Trigger Twitch Legendary set increased the firepower coefficients from 40% to 200. I do not even know how that is a thing. How did they get these numbers? From 40% to 280%. Fixed a bug that prevented the Trigger Twitch set from prioritizing targets properly. Explanation: Trigger Twitch nobody was using it, and now we've made it hit like just Godzilla by the sounds of it. So I'll have to see how that works out. It could be a lot of fun if you can make it work. Mage's Rage, here we go. This is the biggie everyone, I would say, waiting for, but nobody wanted this. Fixed a bug that was causing unforeseen issues with the amount of stacks and the anomaly power calculation. Fixed a bug that was preventing stacks from dropping away as intended when players swapped weapons. Explanation: Mage's Rage provided over twice of what it was supposed to give in terms of anomaly power. This change sets the mod into the right place power wise. While this change may feel significant for any player, basically you're all going to feel this. Everyone's going to feel this. You knew it was coming. Now it's where it should be. Kind of get used to it. Your anomaly power is not going to be quite as high in those millions as you were used to. Another one I was hoping didn't get hit this time was self-medication. Fixed a bug that caused the self-medication mod to fully restore players' health every time it triggered. This was my go-to, guaranteed I'm going to survive every battle move mod. I really liked having this. It's going to be a bit of a pain not having this now. But now it increases the max HP instead by 20% instead of its 10%. It was overperforming, I can see that, I definitely understand, but it is still going to be a bit painful trying to take it out of a build. Next up, we've got no resistance against the fortified. Ouch, this is going to hurt a lot of people again. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my pyro after all these changes. Reduced conversion rate from 100% to 65%. Ouch, that's going to hurt. Dark Sacrifice, reduced health drain from 50% to 25% and increased. They are literally just completely changing up the meta. Whatever you've done before, stop your anomaly. Unless you can turn it into a hybrid build, firepower is definitely going to be probably the way to go on a lot of classes now. Increased damage boost from 25% to 35%. Less health drain. Dark Sacrifice is now a massive mod that you're going to want on a lot of your weapons if you're going down that hit like a truck firepower build. Killing Spree, increased base damage per stack from 10% to 13%. Doesn't matter, not many people use Killing Spree because it's a bit of a pain on those bosses and stuff. You're probably just going to go with Dark Sacrifice, I'm not going to lie. Next up, Fortress, increased the damage boost from 20% to 25% of max stacks. That's actually a nice little buff. It's not going to be quite as noticeable now, but at least they're giving you something that you can have as kind of extra options, and increase is always an increase. First things first, reduced armor piercing value from 50% to 30%. Again, this was the tier 1 mod that everyone was using in order to buff their anomaly power. They don't want you having quite as much by the sounds of it, so that's getting a little kick as well. Moving on to the last page, I'm sure I've taken enough of your time. This is an absolute encyclopedia of stuff today. Tactical Retreat, increased base damage from 54 to 62. That's probably good because nobody was using it. I don't know if anyone still will, to be perfectly honest. Shock and Awe increases the range from 5 to 10 meters. 10 meters is huge, absolutely huge, so we'll have to see how that works out. Fixed a bug that caused the Shock and Awe mod to trigger more often than intended, so they're making up for it by giving you a much bigger radius. Embalmer's Rage reverted this mod back to being a kill shot mod rather than a critical shot mod. They're saying because the kill shot mods wanted to be changed over when Worldslayer hit, but they found this one was much better as it was originally intended. Anomaly power class nodes increased anomaly power value from 10% to 15%. Oh, thank you. At least there's a shining light in this for me. I'll have to see how that works with some of my builds now. But that means you're definitely going to want to pick up as much anomaly nodes as possible. Because like they're saying, they're compensating for the power vacuum created by fixing Mage's Rage and a few other things. I still don't think that's going to be enough to boost up some of your builds to anywhere near what they were. But I may be wrong. We'll have to see. Let me know in the comments what you guys and girls think. But it definitely looks like now is the season to be changing into those weapon damage builds. Weapon damage class node, increased weapon damage value from 8% to 15%. See, with that actually gives rise to the hybrid build. Because of those buffs, hybrid will now be massive. That could be quite fun to see on a lot of builds, and definitely expect Anomaly enhancement, that tier 2 weapon mod, to be rising to the top of the list of a lot of people's builds. This change is intended to bring firepower builds across all classes in line with Anomaly power builds. They've said in a lot of it, bring it in line, so hopefully it will be that, and firepower and Anomaly are now kind of vying for that top spot rather than Anomaly getting kicked to the curb and it all being about firepower, because if it is and you've made yourself a build that you've spent so long doing, you're going to be quite upset. But yeah, I'm sure this took enough of your time. Apologies, it's a huge amount to get through. Let me know in the comments what you guys and girls think. I am wary, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to have to see how it is. There's a big old extensive list there, so it may well be better than it sounds to me. I think it's probably just because I'm a pyro main and they look like they've taken an absolute beating, but there's definitely some good things in there, and I forgot to put it on here, but we have got item lock in there, so thankfully for that there is one big improvement in the game. However, loot, by the looks of it, I'll get into another time, but it definitely looks like your loot space is staying as it is. As always, guys and girls, for all things gaming, for all things Xbox, take care. I'll see you on the next day.